And welcome back to On the DL. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to On the DL, which is brought to you by CapitalDirect.ca. Homeowners, could you use $20,000, $30,000? How about $300,000? Call Capital Direct today at 1-800-NEW-CAPITAL and see what's available for you. So today's guest, I have to say, is probably one of my favorite all-time favorite people I have ever worked with. We worked together for 20 years. 20 years, Joe
Give or take.
Tilley. Come on, 20 years. And we actually sat beside each other on the anchor desk on the weekend at the end of both of our time at CTV News. So, how many years were we together on the weekend? Do you remember?
Would definitely be 3 years, 2 to 3 years at the
That
on
was
the anchor
it?
desk. Yeah, yeah. Just seemed like a long time. No, it was. I know because my shift changed. Remember,
Hmm,
Sunil was on the weekend shift, and
right.
when Bill started the cuts and Sunil left and Bill Hutchison left, then I started doing weekends in addition to 3 days during the week too. So.
Right. So that was my
Mhm.
schedule also. It just felt that we
Mhm.
were together longer on
Yeah,
the
but you know what?
weekend.
I mean, we're on and off. I mean, fill in. We work in weekends. You working during the week for many
Hmm.
many years. So,
Yeah,
we've been on
many.
the anchor desk together for 20 years, really.
Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah.
we are old friends. I guess that's fair to say. We've known each other a very long time. And I'm excited to have you on this show, on this platform, speaking about particular um, things that we've never been able to talk about together, that
Hmm.
we've never really
Hmm.
had the opportunity, or I've never started a conversation with you about certain things about your life. And I know for a lot of people who have watched you for decades and knew you well on local news at CTV and CFTO News, um, don't know a side of you or don't know a part of you that there's a whole other life to Joe Tilley, not just sports, of course, even though everybody seems to think that you eat, live, and breathe sports, which I'm sure you do. I'm sure you still
Well,
do
I watch little sports. I
a
still
little
do.
bit,
Yeah, of
right?
course. Yeah,
Uh,
a
and
little.
that's and that's where
Yeah.
we don't connect, which I always found really fun because I don't watch any sports, and my whole house is filled with boys. It's like I have my own hockey team here, and there are sports on in every room at any given time of the day and night. And I actually don't watch sports, which is very funny. But I know, of course, you watch a lot of sports in your house, right? You still are watching a
Yeah.
ton.
It's funny thing. My wife Penny Claire never used to watch much sports either. But you know what? Over the last number of years, she's become a big Leafs fan. And
Really?
oh yeah, she's become a big Leafs fan. She likes those young Leafs. I mean, with Austin Matthews, and Matthews is her maiden name, so she kind of refers to him as Austin, her nephew. But
Hmm.
yeah, so it's
But why?
uh,
Why is she enjoying them so much now?
oh, because they're a fun, exciting young team, and
Oh, you
for
or did you
for
put that in her head? You put that in her head.
yeah.
She,
Well, no, it's true. It's true. I mean, this version of the Maple Leafs is as exciting a team as probably they've ever had in terms of raw talent. This is a
really?
great, great young team. Yeah, for sure. So they're exciting to watch, and she's been to a few games, and we've had fun watching the Leafs in person, and of course watching them on TV. She rarely misses a game. So yeah.
After all these years,
Hmm.
now she's into the
Well, I
Leafs.
wasn't I wasn't around most of the time, right? To
I
because I
know.
worked nights
Yeah.
for so many years, so
Yes.
I had to introduce her to her, and oh my, this is fun. These guys are
And
good.
what does
Yeah.
that feel like? Because I know for me, when I say to people, I wasn't around for that, or I worked every Saturday and Sunday night, so I wasn't around for my kids' hockey games or the baseball games, especially in the spring and summer months. But now I'm around. I'm around all the
Right.
time. What does it feel like for you to
Hmm.
say that now?
Well, it was fortunately because of my shift back in the day, it was pretty. I was able to be like all weekends. I always had weekends off back in for a number of years, and I was able to be at all my kids' weekend games and practices, and the 6 a.m. things and all that. Um, and then later on, if my kids had a game that was, 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock at night, I could stay there and watch their game before I bolted into work. Because there was a time when my shift was pretty easy. All I had to do was make sure that I was there with the show prepared for 11:30. So, you know, I could be at a game. So I was for a lot of their games. Some games, sometimes I obviously couldn't be there, but the later ones. But, you know, for the most part, I was there.
Okay, I want to read a little bit of your bio right now. So people who are listening, I think most people know who you are, particularly if they're in the Toronto area. But if not, I want them to know who you are. So I'm just going to read a little bit of your bio, if that's okay.
Sure.
So Joe Tilley is a very well-known sports anchor and was a sports anchor at CTV Toronto News since 1984, where he developed a very dedicated audience. And I can attest to that, of course. He's a native of Edmonton and a graduate of the University of Alberta. I didn't know that, Joe. Joe had a successful career as an amateur boxer. He was a Golden Gloves champion, 3-time Alberta welterweight champion, and a bronze medalist at the 1978 Canadian Championships. That's cool.
Yeah, 147 pounds for those who don't know what a welterweight is.
No, I don't know what a welterweight is.
My walking around weight was probably 155, 160 back then, but for competition, I'd get down to 147.
So how did you go from a Golden Gloves champion, a kid from out west, to one of the most recognized faces in Southern Ontario on television?
Well, okay, so originally I was going to be an actor, right? I took drama in university. That was my major, drama, minor in English, and my last year of university, I started working for the campus radio station, doing sports, and got a chance to do a little bit of play-by-play, color, and I did a morning sportscast every day, and I liked it. And then just before I graduated, I started sending some tapes out, and then shortly after I graduated, I got a job in Red Deer, CKRD, and did the from 5 to 10 on the hour. I did a newscast, and then at 11:30 I did a sportscast. Now, sports obviously was my dream job, but my job included weather in the beginning. So what I do is I'd rip and read what that means. You're ripping off the ticker tape and reading the latest review for news review, the hourly recap, and just off the wire. And the whole time I'd spend writing my sportscast. So then when 11:30 came on, I was prepared for my sportscast, and the news, it was a second thought, if anything. And so and it's funny because the afternoon drive DJ at CKRD was a guy named Ron McLean. You may have heard of him. And Ron McLean, so Ron did the weather. So he did from 4 to 6. He did the drive shift on radio, CKRD, maybe 3 to 6, and then he did a weather cast for the news at 6 o'clock, and he taped the cast for the 11:30 news. So at 11:30 on CKRD in Red Deer, you would have saw Ron McLean doing the weather, followed by me doing the sports.
Oh, is that ever cool?
Yeah. So then after about 15 months, it was there. And then I moved on to Lethbridge, CFCN Lethbridge, as a sports director. Well, the sports department, really. They called me a sports director, but I did all the sports. That's all I did, though. So it was 100% sports, which I loved. It was perfect. And then just for giggles, I decided to send a tape to Pat Marsden, who was a sports director at CFTO back then in the early 80s. And it was in 84. And I think it was May of 84. I sent out a tape. I'd been at CFCN Lethbridge for about 9 months. And I was really looking for direction, right? I knew Pat Marsden knew a lot of people in the sports industry. He'd be a good guy to ask about maybe direction, like what would be my next move? What do you think of the work that I'm doing? And is there anything that I should work on? And that type of thing. And so he got the tape. Yeah, he got the tape. And the next day, Fergie Oliver, who'd been there for 22 years, walked into his office and said, Pat, I can't do it anymore. He was doing the Blue Jays. He says, I can't do my weekly shift, my nightly shift. So I'm going to pack it in. So Fergie left. He just seen my tape, and they called me in. And the next thing you know, I'm at CFTO.
That's wild. I never knew that
Mm-hmm.
story. That's
Mm-hmm.
wild. It's real timing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Right place at the
Yeah.
right time. And
Yeah.
but as I was reading through all of your bios and your information, I was doing a little bit of a deep dive into Joe Tilley's life before our interview, of course. And one of the things that I've known about you all these years, but we never talked about, was your experience with alcohol.
Mm-hmm.
And we never had that discussion, you and I. And I know that there's an abundance of drug addiction and alcoholism in media. You know, we were around it, but we somehow it was the elephant in the room with everyone. No one ever talked about the things that their vices or their addictions or their past addictions. And that was one of the things that you and I never conversed about. So I was reading this and I remember hearing that you had issues with alcohol way, way, way back in the day, but you and I had never talked about it. So I thought, oh, it probably was just like a thing. And I'm reading it. And then part of the bio said that you had overcome challenges with alcohol and decided to get your life on track and go to university. So it sounds like you had this part of your life that really was the past, that you
Yeah.
had
Well,
this.
it's a funny. It's see what happened is I've had challenges with alcohol my whole life since I was a teenager and I first started drinking. I couldn't stop, and I didn't want to stop. And then what happened is my life became such a shambles, and I became so depressed and pretty much almost suicidal. And when I was 19 years old, I came to a point where I had a sort of crossroads in my life where I knew I had to do something to change or I was going to die. And so I decided to start. That's when I started boxing. And it was just to change the direction for me. It was an opportunity for me to try something else with my life, something I felt that, at this time I was a high school dropout, right? I started grade 10 once and didn't finish, but started try it again, but didn't finish. And then uh, I started working in odd jobs and losing jobs because of my drinking, and it just spiraled. It got really bad, and so I reached a point where uh, I was decided that I'm going to give this life a shot through boxing, and it became really my new addiction because I would go to the gym twice a day. I go to the
A
gym in
day?
the afternoon. Yeah, twice a day. I go to the gym in the afternoon and I'd go train at gym, do some shadow boxing, skipping, uh, other stuff. And then I'd go home and do my road work. And then I'd come back and I'd go back to the gym and spar and hit the bag and stuff like that. And the trainer there at the Native Friendship Center in Edmonton, they had a good reputation. So that's where I started my amateur career. He saw that I was serious. So he asked me if I wanted to have a fight. And I said, sure. So I was in great shape. I worked hard and I won the fights. And next thing you know, I'm fighting for the novice championship, and I won the Alberta novice championship. And then they turned me open, and I got a chance to travel with the Alberta team. We went to Ireland. We went to various places in the States, Vegas, and got a chance to. The next following year, I fought as an open and won the provincial championship, and I went to the nationals and won a bronze medal, and then so it was my life changed, and as a result of this new addiction, which was a much healthier one, I ended up
Mhm.
focusing on boxing. I ended up going back to school, but when I was 20 years old, I'd collected enough courses by going back to school that I was able to get into university. I didn't have enough credits. Never, I still don't to this day have enough high school credits, but I do have the courses because you can combine math. See, in Alberta, it's 10, 11, 12 is high school. So math 10, math 2030, math, English 2030. And I combined these courses and I worked hard and I got through my high school courses in a relatively short period of time, got into university and started to train continued to train, continued to work doing my boxing thing while I was going to school, kept me pretty much on the straight and narrow, got myself into a career, really wanted to be successful in my career, stayed on the straight and narrow during the week. Weekends were always a blowout for me
What
after
do you
that.
mean?
Well, even when I was boxing, I remembered that in the summertime, when the season was kind of quiet, when there weren't tournaments going on, when there wasn't stuff going on, I would cook up with my old friends. We'd get together and I'd party, right? I'd drink my face off and whatever, and go on a complete crazy bender for a couple of weeks, and then I'd get back into training again. And I really look forward to those times when I could, unwind again. And then once I started, into my career, the weekends were a big thing. Partying was a big thing, and gradually it got worse and worse when I was moving up in my career, really trying hard to, be successful. I could focus, but then I would have my weekend blowouts, and then I'd go back to, But I remember I would always be pretty bad shape on Monday, but that's the way it was.
Did people notice? Do you think people noticed?
People around me noticed. I mean, people told me that they were worried about me and things like that. And certainly my wife noticed, and she started to have a real problem with my carrying on. So again, I reached that crossroads in my life where I was, had to leave the house and was living in a friend's one-bedroom basement apartment, and having to look at myself and realize that I didn't want to die, because I was dying. It was a mess, and I've lost my family now, and I got a wife and 3 kids, and I'm living in my friend's one-bedroom basement apartment, and life is just a complete party. I mean, I would leave work to go drink, and it was getting pretty bad. So I had to do something about it. So I did. I called the treatment center. I went into treatment, and things started to change for me.
What year was this?
1992.
So well before my time, before we knew each other.
Yeah, but by the time you got there, I was sober. I'd been sober for a few years, actually. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I had started in 2000. So yeah, it seems like that in TB time, that would be almost a lifetime after. I can't even fathom what that must have been like, working at that pace in local news, just pumping out newscasts and the grind, and then drinking your face off at night, and then having to wake up the next morning and do it all over again. I couldn't even fathom the ups and the downs physically. I don't know how you did that, but you got your shit together.
Yeah. Well, it was a challenge, no doubt about it. And I was dying. There's no other way to look at it. When I went to treatment, the doctor said, you got a distended liver. You're in rough shape. And I was in rough shape, and I'd lost my family, and the job was hanging by a thread, I think, at that time. And when I went away to treatment, I got a letter from the president of the company, Douglas Bassett. And he said, really pleased that you're doing something about your problem. I support you all the way. We support you all the way. And we're happy to, send you away to treatment. And if I find out you've been drinking, you're fired. A little extra motivation, but, really, I mean, when you're nice to people who have a problem, and you now allow them to continue on in the way they're going, you're an enabler, right? And when you enable people to continue on in their addiction, you're not helping. So I'm really grateful for that. I mean, it wouldn't be enough to stop me from drinking. I mean, he could have fired me. It wouldn't be enough to stop me from drinking. I had to come to my own conclusion, and my life was a waste, a mess, and I was dying, and I had to be willing to do whatever it took to change. So
do you think viewers knew? Do you think people knew that about you?
Well, people knew who saw me, at the bar after work, right? Okay. People that I used to go to the bar with after work, said something. Like I had few people that I go with once in a while, but I try to get people to go with me quite frequently, and they wouldn't be going every night like I was, right? And then I have to go to different bars because I didn't want people at the one bar to think I had a problem. So you go to 3 or 4 different bars, and different liquor stores and places like that too, because you don't want people to think you got a problem. So you do what you got to do.
Alcohol and drug addiction can be a life or death situation, as we know. It is a real issue, and people cover it up in all kinds of ways. So for you, maybe it was being on television was your cover up. Maybe, I don't know, but Uh,
Well, it
it,
justifies. See, what we justify it in our heads. Like we use whatever method we can, because it's like we have a little liar that lives in our heads that tells us we don't have the disease. So we look for ways to compare ourselves to other people who are worse than us. And we say to
mhm,
ourselves, wow,
always.
if I ever get as bad as he is, I'm going to do something about it, right?
Hmm.
And it's like, that's what the disease tells us. The disease lies to us, and it's deception. It's cunning, baffling, and powerful. And it's going to do whatever it takes to keep us on that merry-go-round of doom.
Have you been sober since the early 90s?
Yep. Yeah. 28 years and 8 months, I guess.
Wow. What is that like?
It's great. It's allowed me to have the kind of life that I always probably wanted to have, and be the type of person I think I was meant to be. Right. It's it's a life that I couldn't imagine. Well, put it this way: I would never have existed this long, the way I was
Hmm.
going. You know, it would a lot was not long before I lost a job, and then it's like on to another crummier job, and then on to another crummier job, and then unemployed, and then dying in the streets. Maybe, I
So
don't know.
that's very grim, Joe. that
Well, it's
that
true,
idea
but
of
I mean,
dying in
I
the
know a guy.
streets.
Sure, I know a guy who was a reporter for the Toronto Star, and he was in the same situation as me. But he ended up losing his job and went further and further down, and he ended up getting murdered in a men's hostel.
When
Yeah,
was that?
back in the early 2000s or late 90s, and around there. Yeah. Hmm.
Okay, that's
Yeah.
terrible. That's actually
Yeah.
horrible.
Hmm.
So you're not, I mean, you're not, you lived with alcoholism. Did you dabble at all in drugs?
No, that wasn't my thing. I loved alcohol. Loved what it did for me. You know, it was just that was what worked for me. So that's what I was into.
Okay.
Hmm.
And so, can we talk about Spencer? Are you okay to
Sure.
talk about Spencer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I don't even know how to segue to Spencer from that. I didn't even know we were going to talk about alcohol in such depth. I just thought it was something to bring up with you. And I didn't even know that part of your life. I'm honored that you just shared that with me. I think anybody listening can may relate to what it's like to have an alcohol problem, particularly right now, this time of life
Yeah.
in the world that
Well.
we're living right now. People are abusing vices, alcohol being one of them.
Yeah. Worse than ever. Worse than ever.
I know a couple people
Hmm.
close to me that I've seen them going down this route,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
it's scary. It's very scary.
Right.
So,
See, the message I want to convey out there is there is help.
mhm.
And the key is for us to reach out for help and ask for help. I know that there's problem with alcoholism and drug addiction. There's so much shame and
Mhm.
around that disease that really doesn't have to be there. It's kind of like our attitude towards mental illness is changing, not changing fast enough probably, but it's no different than any other disease, right? Addiction, alcoholism, mental illness, they're all diseases. They all you know we're not I'm not less as a lesser human being because I have this disease, and I don't there's nothing wrong with me. A lot of people think it's a willpower thing. It's just not a willpower thing.
No,
It's an affliction that you can't control.
no, of
And
course.
so the
Hmm.
faster we can get our heads around that and understand and reach out for help, the faster we can get well. And there's a lot of people who are willing to help, and there's a lot of places you can go to reach out to get help, and that's what we need to do. It's a disease that disenfranchises us from humanity. It keeps us separate from, and we need to be part of. We as a human species, I mean, we need to be connected, and we need to. And when we're drug addicts and alcoholics, we lose that connection. And so it's really important that we find that connection. So that is vital in recovery, is to get connected. And treatment's a good place to start. And treatment will introduce you to a community, and then you get into that community, and there's some certain steps, principles you have to follow, and then when you do that, you recover. You become. It's the only disease when you recover from it, you become a better person than you were before you even had it,
Hmm.
before you even suffered from it. It's a rare. It's really unique that way. And so, but you got to do the work. So,
And yet, it's so prevalent in society, and yet there's so many people suffering and living with both drug addiction and alcoholism, and yet, as you said, it's so disenfranchised. You're
mhm,
so disconnected when you're suffering, and there's such a stigma to it.
right,
um, and it really, it's time to just break it down already. It's just
right. But
time.
I mean, when you're in, you don't realize how you're isolating. You just don't realize it, but you are, and you're gradually pushing everybody away, and then you're by yourself, and then you can't believe there's nobody around you, but nobody wants to be around you when you're
Right, you go from what you think is the party on the weekend
right.
to
Yeah,
complete
yeah,
isolation, right, and
right,
trying to survive it,
right.
right?
And isolation is the worst thing for an addict or alcoholic. You know, we need to be connected. That's what that's when the problem, one of our major problems is we need to be connected, right? Yeah.
So tell me about Spencer. So you have three
Well,
children, you have
yeah.
three kids.
Yeah, yeah.
Can you
And the
tell me their
disease
names?
it runs, well, there's Tyler is our oldest,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
He's 37. He's an artist.
Hmm.
He lives in Bangkok, and you should see his stuff. It's crazy.
I know my
It's
sister has one
amazing.
of his paintings.
Yeah, yeah,
I've
yeah,
told you that,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's
From Eye Candy
stunning. It's
on
so stunning.
yeah,
Yeah.
mhm, yeah, yeah, on Avenue Road.
Okay.
Yeah, so he's got his art all over the world, really.
Yeah.
But if you go to tylertilley.com, you can see it.
Yeah.
Maddie Jo, our daughter, she's well, just a new mom
No.
and actress, author, amazing person, and
Amazing.
she works on my show with us, and the Joe Tilley Sports Show,
Yeah.
so pretty cool. Penny Claire also works on the show. You know,
Yeah, we're going to talk
paper,
about your show. We'll get there.
big
Hmm.
Big Leafs fan, and yeah, and yeah, yeah, she's amazing, and uh, and Spencer, our youngest, he was born in '89, and so. Spencer was an amazing, beautiful kid, a wonderful guy. He was the first one who started all the kids. All my kids are artists, but Spencer kind of started, ended up going to art school. But he struggled from the same disease that I have. And so he was, he decided he's going to go join the army to, help him get straightened out, I guess, suppose. And he was there for, first year and a half, 2 years. Things seemed to be going pretty good. He was, bought a car. He came home. He seemed to be doing great. Was up in Petawawa, and then one day we got a call from a lawyer in Pembroke saying that Spencer was in jail, and he'd been involved. We didn't realize it, but he'd been involved in some heavy drugs, some oxycontin, some opiates, and gotten into some trouble. So anyway, he got through that situation. Ended up leaving the army, the military, and came home. He went to treatment 3 times. First couple of times he left early. Third time he went through treatment, was sober for a period of time, got the last installment of a inheritance, and then he went out and used again, and was sober for a period of time, was working out west, came back to visit us. It was a really amazing visit we had with them all. But before he went back, he had with all of us. Before he went back, he picked up again, and then he lost his job because he was working with heavy equipment and the oil patch, and he lost the job, and so he came back and he got a motel room, cleaned up some stuff, some personal business, and then we got a call one night, and it was a police, and they came to our house, and my wife was there, and I was on the phone the other end, and the policeman informed us that Spencer had died, and it turned out he died of a fentanyl overdose, and he was 25 years old. It was October 8th, 2014, and that's a life-changing, life-altering occurrence, and yeah, it was devastating, and a real difficult situation to get through, and it's something you never ever move on from entirely, but you learn to grow with it in a different way. We learn to experience Spencer in a different way. We learn to connect to him from a different realm, and it is what it is, and we have to understand that like it was just so at the time I was 22 years sober, and speaking with spiritual advisors and people, and I came to realization that I'd gone through this struggle through my life, and came to believe that there was a power that I could put my faith in, to trust me, that could get me through, get me sober, to help me to live a good life, and that there was meaning in this. There was meaning in this, and so nothing happens by mistake, and everything, things happen for a reason. And what happens is we got involved in an organization called Bereaved Families of Ontario, Durham region, and that was really helpful, to be with other dads who had gone through similar stuff and who had lost children, and there's numerous Spencer's. It was an accidental fentanyl overdose, and so many people have had lost children for the same way, and so there's a lot of connection through there, and then getting involved with them, and I'm able to be a facilitator with them and help other people get through that as well. And there's good friends who have come in and gone through the same thing that I've gone through, and I got to share with them, and I get to share with other alcoholics and addicts, and I work at a treatment center, and so I get to share with them Spencer's journey, and hopefully there's a little bit of that can help them, and so Spencer gets to help others in that regard.
Wow.
Still, because he wanted to be somebody who was helpful. He wanted to. He thought he had dreams of maybe being a counselor at some point and helping people through addiction. And when he was sober, and so
So you work in a treatment center now?
Yeah.
Wow, Joe.
One day a week, I work at a treatment center now.
And so in many ways you feel Spencer's presence when you're doing this? You feel like that's a part of you staying connected to your son?
Spencer's always with me. I mean, I can give you a whole bunch of different examples of how Spencer has connected with us from this other realm, and it will blow your mind. But unfortunately, it'd take me two hours to go through it all. But
Okay.
Shortly after he died, we saw an owl in our backyard. I've never seen an owl in our backyard, right? Never. And it was sitting over. My son-in-law saw him fly into the yard, saw a strange bird fly into this tree. My son Todd was doing an art piece on the backyard table, and so about 20 minutes later, half an hour later, all of a sudden these crows started making these god awful noises in that same tree, and this bird flew out of the tree and flew right over our heads, and it was an owl. And then
okay, that's not likely that you're going to see an owl in your back.
No. Well, we went through Spencer's stuff after he died. He had a picture of an owl. It was an owl cutout that he cut out the shape of an owl, and inside the body of this owl, he had drawn a few different pictures, but there was a picture of a tombstone, and on the tombstone there was a person standing beside the tombstone, and it said on the tombstone S.T. his initials, and it said sorry. And he'd drawn this picture when he was 7 years old.
Oh my God, you just gave me chills.
Oh. Yeah, we've had owl, like we have his ashes spread at this tree that we go to visit near our home here in Newcastle, and we walk by the tree and stop by the tree and talk to him frequently, and we'll ask for signs. And one day we were stopped by the tree, and my wife asked for a sign from Spencer, and I said, yeah, I asked for a sign from Spencer, and that's all. They just asked for a sign, and she got specific. She said, yeah, Spencer, we want to see an owl. No, normally she doesn't do this. Normally don't ask for specific signs, but we do see owls from time to time. Like it's crazy. I never saw an owl in my life, ever.
Me neither.
Until I went in my backyard.
Right.
And now I see them. Now we see them all the time. Well, actually,
wow.
A year and a half before he died, an owl hit the window, and I wasn't home, but Penny Claire saw it. That's another story. But anyway, so we took about maybe, 75 steps after making this request, and sitting in this tree is the biggest owl I've ever seen, a great horned owl sitting in a tree just after she'd asked for the. And then my daughter and her husband, we were over, and it was Christmas time 2 years ago. No, last Christmas. And we went for a walk by the tree, and Maddie asked to see, she's got specific and said, we got to see an owl. Well, we didn't see an owl that day, but the next day, on top of the condo we live in, there was a snowy owl. And
Joe,
we're all three saw it. Yeah. A
come
white snowy owl.
on.
Oh yeah, and it goes on, and there's many many stories.
If I see an owl,
I've been
honestly, if
talking
I
to
see an
Tyler
owl,
yeah. I've been talking to
yeah.
my son Tyler from Bangkok he lives in Chiang Mai now, but Thailand on
Yeah.
the phone, and I'm talking on the phone, and as we're talking, I look and I said, "Oh my God, Tyler, an owl just flew by," and I yelled. And Penny Claire was upstairs, and she looked at the balcony. She says, "Yes, I see it. I see it." And it flew over in between the buildings, and so
Wow,
like
you're
owl
giving
sightings
me
all the
chills.
time. It's crazy. Yeah. So anyway,
When
that's
you're,
we connected to Spencer that way, and there's we're really open to seeing it. We're really open to having that connection from the other side, and I talk to him all the time, and it's great.
and I remember when Spencer died, and I'm completely guilty of this. We never talked about that either.
Mm-hmm.
I never talked about it. I remember seeing you when you got back to work, and I had said sorry. I think we embraced. I may have hugged you, but that was it. Like I never asked about Spencer. I never talked to you about Spencer all those years, and I wanted to.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm guilty of it because I didn't know how to bring it up. I didn't know what to say. I remember when I interviewed Maddie Joe, your daughter, about the release of her book, which is
Mm-hmm.
fabulous. We sat and we talked about Spencer for almost an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And we were pretty much strangers before that day.
Yeah.
And yet I work with
Well,
you,
Drawing Dreams
and
is, Spencer was the
exactly,
inspiration for that book. Yeah.
exactly. And yet I worked with you, and I saw you almost every day, and I couldn't speak to you about it. And I think that there's something to be said. First of all, I'm sorry that I couldn't speak to you about it. That's on me.
I
But
think
I
that's a
think people
common
can't
thing. Yeah.
talk. I do.
Yeah.
I think it's common. And
Yeah.
that's why I bring
Yeah.
it up, because
Yeah.
uh, people don't know what to say, first of all, when somebody loses a child. But when somebody loses a child to a drug overdose, it's mind boggling.
Mm-hmm.
It's mind boggling. And you don't know what to say. And I feel like maybe you can offer some insight as to maybe
Well,
what people should be saying
I
to
mean,
open up a conversation about it.
I guess everybody's different in the sense that how they react to it, and some people get like some people get really locked into their cells, right? Some people become really isolated, and they break away, and and like my feeling was I needed people to help me, and like I got so many millions of hugs, and it was really I liked that. It was helpful for me, helped me to get through that, and I think I like to talk about Spencer. Like, I mean, I like to keep his spirit and story alive, and I like I like the fact that he can help other people, and he likes the fact that he can help other people, and so yeah, so I a lot of people are like me, and when they like to talk about it, so that when you bring it up, and they say, and when they ask you about your children, and you say, well, I got one, he's 37 years old, he's an artist, he lives in Thailand. I got a daughter who is an actress and an author and a new mother, and she's an amazing mother, and she lives in Toronto. And then I got another son, Spencer, who lives in heaven, and they say, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to. Oh, no, of course, it's fine. I love to talk about Spencer. So there's not a problem there. I think it's we're worried about bringing up old hurts, but the old hurt, it's not bringing up old hurt, because the hurt is always there. It's just kind of like
Yes.
it's always with you. The hurt, it's like a constant hurt, but it's no longer the constant gut punch, which what it was in the beginning. It's like it's like constantly getting punched in the gut again and again and again. Over time, I'm able to share his experience. I'm able to share my experience, and you know, it's kind of like an emptiness that will always exist, that will always be there because he's not here in this realm. But, you know, I like I said before, I get to enjoy him from a different realm. And, you know, he's, in a sense, he's always with me, you know, always with me. So.
And you having recovered and going through the various stages of treatment, did you see a part of you and Spencer when he was going through his treatment?
Oh
Were you
yeah.
able to connect and talk openly with him about it?
Oh yeah, he was very much like me, and we did talk about it, and I offered him some my own experience with regard to treatment and everything else. But you know, for him to really get this, and I believe that if he hadn't had the overdose, he would have got this. He would eventually got sober. No question in my mind. And he, you know, those periods of the blowout addiction were getting smaller, and the periods of time of clean were growing. And I think it would have been eventually he would have got to a point where he would have been clean and sober. But you know, overdoses happen, right? And so you know, but I think it's imperative. Sometimes somebody can be too close. You know, I mean, we need to open up about our lives and who we are, and be honest. And you know, and my whole life was a lie. You know, in addiction, my whole life is a lie. I'd lie about everything. I didn't have to, but I thought I did. I lie about stuff I didn't have to lie about. It just came naturally. And to get open and honest with somebody, sometimes it can be somebody that's too close. You know. And so I think it would have been probably somebody else that would have got through to him and worked with him and allowed him to, you know, somebody that he could have worked with and somebody that he could have learned from, and somebody that would have helped him to get what he needed to get, rather than somebody who's as close as a father or so. You know.
Okay. Tell me a little bit about what life has been like for you. New topic. What's life been like for you since you left local news?
Well, you know, it was you know, you see, because the corporate changeover at CTV, you could see the writing on the wall. And one year was this thing, and it seemed every November there was something new coming along, and somebody else was leaving, and some other department was getting cut down. And throughout the entire network, we could see that we were the last sports department in the CTV network.
I know, that was wild because
yeah,
you're so good. It was so good.
Well, I remember. Yeah, well, I remember going to see the president of news at CTV, and I said to her, I said, "Look at, I'm seeing the writing on the wall here. We're the last sports department. Are we next?" And she said, "No, Joe, love what you guys are doing. Just keep doing what you're doing. No worries, all that stuff not going to happen. Keep doing what you're doing." And I said, "Okay." So you know, but I was aware that the possibility was there. So I went to talk to our financial guy. We checked out all of our pension stuff, and he said, "Well, you know, you're in good shape, Joe. If they you know, if they decide to offer you a package, you're in great shape." And so I thought, okay. And I said, you know, I'm kind of getting tired of it anyway. Maybe I should just quit. And he said, no, stay.
Right.
Wait till they give you a package. It's going to come. And I said, okay. So, well, I waited, and the package came. So for me, it was in a sense golden, like the golden handshake. It really was golden. And so I, you know, I was in good shape financially. I had no plans to do anything. I was just going to kind of ride off in the sunset and do lots of traveling and all that stuff. And, you know, I've been traveling. I've been hosting tours for, you know, Nexus holidays and Nexus vacations, and you know, doing all that kind of stuff like that. And then, you know, all of a sudden a buddy of mine said, "You want to do a show?" And I said, "Like an internet show?" And I said, "I don't know. Anyway, I'll try it." So we just tried it, put it out there and started doing it. And I kind of enjoyed it. And the next thing you know, you know, after a while, I decided that my good idea to go on my own, just to do on my own. And it seemed to fit. And so that's what I did. And now
and it's called, what is it called? We can tell everybody, what's it called?
Joe Tilley Sports. Joe Tilley Sports. Joe Tilley Sports. Come on.
Do it again, do it again, do it
Joe
again.
Tilley Sports coming up.
Oh, it's so good, Joe. That's so good. I'm so happy you just did that. The Joe Tilley Sports Show, where can people find it?
Well, we're live every 1 o'clock every Thursday on Facebook Live.
Mm-hmm.
And this week we got Scotty Bowman on the show. Greatest, probably the greatest coach, period, in sports history. Definitely the greatest coach in NHL history. We've had some great guests on the show. We had Eurico Rosa da Silva, jockey, on the show. He was amazing. Talked about his struggles in life and on the track, and life on the track, and growing up in the slums of Brazil. And then we've had Rick Vive on the show, another guy who's been sober for a while. And then we've had Wendell Clark and
He's so cool. I love Wendell Clark. He's so cool.
And Ron Ellis was tremendous, and
Mm-hmm.
we had Tracy Murray from the Raptors on the show. So we got some pretty cool guests. Paul Henrik, former
Cool.
host of the Leafs TV, and Paul Patsko. And so we got a good lineup.
If people miss you on Facebook Live, where can they catch it after?
Well, yeah,
on
so
your
we
Facebook
hold
page?
watch parties. You can just Joe Tilley Sports. Go to the Joe Tilley Sports Facebook page. You can see all the shows on there. Yeah, and everything else we post on there is on there too. So, yeah. So,
isn't it so wild, the two of us talking like this on this platform? Mm-hmm. It's wild.
Well, it's kind of fun having. Oh, by the way, I love your commercial spots.
Oh, thank you.
Capital
Thank you,
Direct
Joe.
on TV.
Thanks.
You do a fantastic job, man. You're natural.
Thanks, Joe.
Awesome.
Thanks. Well, they're the title sponsor of On the DL.
Yeah.
And so it was a natural fit when they asked me to be the spokesperson of their new campaign, and they're sponsoring the show. So I thought it works well. I had to wrap my head around it, being in news for so long.
Right.
We were literally brainwashed that you couldn't ever front or promote a product or anything ever. So
you can't stray from the mothership. They take all the revenue. We don't.
Right. Like, think about how many commercials we did over the years for all the
my
brand
show
partners.
By somebody every night. Yeah.
Exactly.
Somebody every night.
Exactly. Exactly. So
all kinds of companies. Yeah.
So I had to wrap my head around it, and our good friend Mike Boone had to slug me over the head a couple times and get over yourself. This is a good thing. I went, okay. I'll take this. Great opportunity.
Well, it's like we have our own TV station, right? That's what it's like.
That's exactly what it is. And
the revenue, we get to collect our own revenue. We get to source it out. We get to sell ourselves, which is what we've always been doing anyway.
And we get to do the work we want to do.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we don't have to do anything we don't want to do, right?
Yeah.
And you've always had that compassionate side. So this is right up your alley, and it's good.
Thanks, Joe.
It's awesome.
That's nice of you. And where else can people find you other than Facebook? Are you on Twitter? Are you?
Well,
I know people want to connect with you.
Yeah, at Joe Swiss Tilley on Twitter, at Joe Swiss Tilley on Instagram, and Facebook, Joe Tilley and Joe Tilley Sports, and so
I'm really happy that we reconnected. I always love connecting with you. You've been always a source of inspiration for me, and always so supportive. I want to throw that out there because I want people to know that I didn't just call on you because I thought you were just this great guy that I worked with. You always were there for me. I would call you anytime, whether you were at CTV or post CTV years. You always made time for me, and always had the bang on right advice for me. You always just said, this is what you got to do, Dana. This is the way it goes, right? And I thought, okay, it's coming from Joe Tilley. This is the way it is, right? You set me straight. So I've always appreciated you, and I appreciate how candid you just were. I know this was not an easy conversation, but I know that people listening to this and watching this, having known you all these years, will appreciate how honest you are about this part of your life, because it will help people for sure.
Yeah, that's the point, right? We get to grow, and we get to help other people. That's takes us to a new place, right?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe Tilley. Thank you so much. Be well. Dana. Send my life to your whole family, everybody.
I will do. Yeah. Oh yeah. And keep doing what you're doing. It's awesome. Thanks.
Thanks, Joe. We'll speak soon.
Okay.
Bye.
Namaste.